Hey, this is Kevin Purcell with the Theotek News podcast and Hangout on Air. And as you can see, I'm in my dark basement tonight. I'm actually on my Dell Chromebook. It's not actually mine. It's the review unit that I'm testing out. And for that reason, the camera just doesn't look quite as good as what I normally use with the lights on. But tonight we're kind of down a little bit. Antoine Edwards couldn't join us, and LaRosa Johnson couldn't join us. Thankfully, instead, we have Wes Allen, who saved the day and kept this from being just me spouting off all on my own. And so, Wes, I'm thankful that you came to join us. If you don't mind, just kind of tell our audience, both of them, who you are and where you're from, and get it going that way.
Sure. Thank you very much for the invite. I'm Wes Allen. I am a pastor in Palmyra, New Jersey at Central Baptist Church, but I'm also running kind of communication technology for the American Baptist Churches of New Jersey. I'm doing kind of their media technology, and I'm trying to give pastors a theological connection to this kind of communications revolution that we're in.
All right, great, thank you. And so that gives you probably a lot of credibility. And we're a couple of pastors here tonight, so
there you go.
That'll make it lots of fun for all the listeners. Maybe if you just suddenly want to spout off in a sermon, and then we can take an offering later. All right. Well, we're a little bit light on news. Normally, Antoine and LaRosa and I, we put all of the things that we see during the couple of weeks into a group notebook on Evernote, and until about an hour ago, there was only one thing in that, and that was the fact that Olive Tree had done some updates, and I don't have a whole lot of information about that. I was hoping that LaRosa would be here so that he can share a little bit about that. The only thing that I'll say is that they've updated their Windows app, and if you are in the Windows 8 environment and want to go check that out, it looks like there's a nice update there. I personally don't use a Windows 8 computer at all, but just by reading what's on their blog, it looks like they've got some nice additions. You can start highlighting some things and do multiverse notes and highlights in it. It also looks like some more tagging features, and basically they're just hopefully going to eventually bring that Windows App Store version of Olive Tree more in line with the version for Windows computers, the old version for Windows 7 or a Mac or Android, or probably the best, in my opinion, the best Olive Tree app is on the iPad. Have you used that, Wes?
Yeah, I used both that and Accordance on my iPad. So
you're also an Accordance user, huh? How do you feel about the various iPad apps, and which one's your favorite?
They both have different strengths. I think I wrote a blog when Accordance first came out with their first version, and one of the things that really interested me when they were doing their teasers that the iPad version was coming was that they kept on showing the search features and not the reader features, and I was really intrigued by that. Yeah. And then after I got to use it, I went, oh, no wonder they did this, because it really ties into Accordance's search power on the desktop side of things. I mean, you can run just about anything that you can run on the desktop, and the output is just absolutely brilliant. So that's one of the things I really appreciate about Accordance, and of course all my notes and stuff that I usually do that on Accordance, so I have that tied in on my iPad. I know Olive Tree is very adamant that their tool is a Bible study app, so I'm glad that to point that out for them. But I use Olive Tree primarily as my reader. So that's first thing I do when I wake up in the morning is I open up, and I think Olive Tree's reading plans are one of their most unsung great features of that app. And so hit the continue reading, go through. I'm done the reading, it's all checked off, and I go through, and that's kind of my habit on that. So I really appreciate both of them for slightly different reasons.
Have you spent much time in some of the others, like maybe a Logos or others on the iPad?
Yeah, I've dabbled in Logos. It's never captured my interest. I think if I probably had a little more time, maybe I could. And of course, Logos and their mobile version really they went kind of the same way with their desktop. They were like, this is a Christian e-reader, because they started selling digital books and they were marketing in that for a blip on the radar. I don't know if they're doing it that way anymore. And it never really intrigued me the way that Olive Tree and Accordance have. And of course, I was using Olive Tree on my iPac back in 2003. So I've been heavily invested in Olive Tree resources and in the well-being of that company and product. So I'm going to stick with them for a long time.
Well, we're kindred spirits there. That's how I got my start in Bible apps on a mobile device. Was actually on a Trio.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see. No, before that it was I had a Palm device. That's what I had first, and then I switched over to Windows, or Pocket PC is what they called it back then.
Mm-hmm.
And Olive Tree was my app, and so that's what I opened and used almost primarily. That's what, been like 12, 15 years ago now, something like that.
Yeah, I can't believe how long ago that is now.
I know, it's crazy.
I remember the first time I got it, I was thinking to myself that if this had better multi-app support, I would just do my work from here with the keyboard. And then here I am with my iPad now, a decade later, gone, that's pretty much what I do. So
do you spend most of your time doing your Bible research on the iPad? Or on a computer?
It's probably about 50-50. The nice thing is that if I'm typing on my computer on the MacBook and I need to do something, I just close up and go somewhere else and take my iPad with me and type on that and type out my notes and things like that. The iPad Accordance app, one of the things I really wish they would incorporate support for is for user tools, because that's how I keep track of my thoughts on the sermon that I'm doing and keep track of my current translations that I'm working on and that sort of thing. And so that part I can't do.
So what does your workflow look like? I enjoy hearing pastors talk about, how I picked my passage to I'm preaching my passage. Just real quick, what does your workflow look like?
My workflow actually starts right about now. Every year is I take a Google Apps spreadsheet and I map out the year. And I put in, the first thing that I do is I put in the major Christian seasons, and I color code them according to liturgical color. So I'm, funky Baptist that way, and go through. It's been my habit that during the high seasons, and sometimes during, and sometimes also the high seasons being Advent and Lent, but also into Easter, taking the revised lectionary just for those seasons. I love the rotation of it. It makes people, it leads people into chewing into different aspects, especially during Advent season, because Advent is both about the first and second comings of Christ, and we focus so much on the first coming, and we don't realize that there's this whole eschatological aspect to Advent. And so it's kind of nice, and I've had people come up to me going, I've never thought of Advent as being anything to do with that. So it's kind of neat. And then afterwards, I look and I see what breaks I have in between the different seasons, and I begin to fill out what sermon series that people in church have said, we really want to hear something on this, or how about on a book of the Bible that we haven't heard from in a while, or that we'd never heard preached on, and begin to fill out the sermons throughout the whole year, so that by the time August hits, my sermons are mapped out for the whole year. So, and actually there was a book that I read that really encouraged me to do that. It was just called Planning a Year's Preaching. And the whole point of that was that this really enables you to chew on things that you would naturally avoid. Because if you only have 2 weeks, you're not going to spend time researching something that you're uncertain of because you're too panicky. There's a deadline that you got to hit. But when you have 6 months, well, then you can start doing the research and the planning and the chewing, and go through and
doing that. Like you're now looking ahead.
Yes. Oh yeah. Typically during the summer months is when I plan my biggest sermon series for the year, and I'll grab my reading and I'll read that stuff all during the summer. If I need like an ancillary information for people, I'll write that up over the summer after doing my reading to give to them. So that's all summer month work for that. That's these couple months. Traditionally speaking, pastors used to get the summer months off just to do exactly that. So I'm like, yeah, I'll just pick that up for that. That would be kind of fun. And so that's what it is. And then as I go through, my workflow's changed a little bit because I picked up some more time working for ABCNJ. So I'm a little bit more flexible. But Tuesday I usually do, in the morning, I do my translations, and I'll try to do at least 1 or 2 passages. I like to keep 1 or 2 weeks ahead, just to chew on things. So if there's something that I really am confused by, I can actually go back and kind of look at that or pick up a commentary. Wednesday is when I do my thoughts, and I like to be at least a week ahead on that, but this year I've been kind of doing that the same week of my sermon. But again, I've translated a couple weeks before, so it's in my brain already, and I'll do my just the notes on every verse as I go through. What highlights, what relationships am I seeing? It's not high academic stuff, but it's kind of follow the path of the scripture. I would describe it as the story that passage is trying to tell. And
does that look like in your Bible software? Do you use that, or do you record?
Yeah, I use I started using Accordance Notes. I didn't used to, and I really have come to love Accordance Notes, because I find especially if I'm doing a lectionary, and I get to a lectionary reading that I've done before, I can see what I was thinking the last time that I did it, and sometimes I can repent. Which is always a fun thing. So it's kind of fun.
Are you using Accordance now? So how many years worth of notes have you got?
I got my MacBook in early 2009 and started using Notes. Well, I started using Accordance in 2010, so I have about 4 years of Notes. So because I spent my first year, I had BibleWorks. I was using it. I was just booting into. What was I using? I wasn't using Parallels. I was using Fusion to boot into BibleWorks for a year. And then my Fusion install, because all Windows installs do this eventually, just imploded. And I'm like, forget it, I'm getting Accordance. So I just jumped and finished the whole thing. And so I have about 4 years of notes in there. All my other stuff is all in a myriad of files and all over the place. So that's Wednesday.
The frustrating part about if you've ever switched Bible software, like you said you did, I did the same. I actually started in eSword. I started in QuickVerse, and the original. People who have watched all of these podcasts heard me tell this story. I started with QuickVerse when it was a 5 1/4-inch floppy disk system, and there were 6 disks. And if you searched for the word grace, because it's in almost every book, you kept having to flop out the disks, because it didn't install.
Right.
And so you didn't take notes in that. But once I finally got to, I think it was version 2.0, they added notes. But, then I went to eSword, and then BibleWorks, and then Logos, and then, Olive Tree on the computer. So it's kind of frustrating. So I've got, I exported all my notes from BibleWorks. That's the last place I got them all consolidated.
Mm-hmm.
But using like you said, that's one of the great tips maybe someone who's watching this could get is use your Bible software notes for that reason, because all that great work you did on a passage, let's say you come back to it, like you said, a lectionary passage, or maybe you've preached through a book of the Bible, and 3 years from now you just want to do chapter 3 verses 1 through 5 or whatever. You've still all that great work that you did right there, and you can sort of stand on your shoulders from 3 years ago.
And you can cover things that you had already thought about but didn't have time in a sermon, where you're trying to go through a whole book. Now you're just doing a passage, and you can chew on a whole different portion of that passage, which is really nice. So it is really fun. I do wish that there would be a better export, just generic. Export this out as plain text, or even better XML, and just have Bible companies go, all right, cool. Here's our standard XML format to import notes for different biblical software. That would be a beautiful thing.
Put me on my soapbox, but I'll stay off of it. About how they all move.
Well, but the nice thing about the Accordance ones is that the files are essentially plain text. I mean, I can open up and read it. At least I think I can. I tried once, so I can get to the stuff. So if Accordance goes belly up, I can still access my files. And I write in Markdown, so I'm used to writing in plain text anyway, so it's always kind of fun. So that's kind of nice. But yeah, the notes are brilliant. I it's one of the features I really love of working with Bible software, is the ability to do that and have it in one spot and follow me around.
Yeah, that's the awesome part, is especially now with I can't remember, I don't use Accordance on the iPad, but you said that your notes from Accordance, the desktop, can sync to the iPad as well?
Yeah, they can either do a local sync or sync through Dropbox, so I have it just set up to sync through Dropbox. And it,
Okay. Yeah, that's
blink and there it is.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's look on. I want to cover a couple of the other news items that we just real quick. I'm interested in just this what we find from Floridian. Did you ever use Pocket Bible for way back in the day or anything like that?
No, I never did. I've always looked at it, but I never had a chance to look at it or to use it.
Well, it's a nice feature. I'm going to pop in this. Let's see here. As I said, I'm using a computer I haven't used in a while, so I'm trying to find how, or I haven't used yet for a podcast. So I'm trying to remember how to play a YouTube video in here on Hangouts on Air feature. Let's see here. Sorry, folks, for boring you with this behind-the-scenes kind of stuff. Well, it's not going to work. Anyway, let's just...
that'll teach you for using a demo.
Website, Meridian.com. You'll find they have a blog, and it talks a little bit about some of the new features that you can find in their new Android version, which that's what I use. I use Android primarily on my phone, and so I was pretty excited that it now will... I haven't actually even opened it up to use these things, but you can add notes. We were talking a lot about notes. You can now add notes on the Android side of Pocket Bible, which is excellent. And, of course, you can sync those so that if you happen to use their desktop app as well, then on Windows or not yet on Mac, it's coming. They did a Kickstarter campaign to see if there was enough demand for it, and of course I jumped on that because you said you used Olive Tree earliest. I also used Pocket Bible. That was one of the first things, and it is the first Bible app that I installed on my iPad when it came out. But
oh, neat, cool.
Yeah, so I've got probably I don't know, $500-600 worth of books still in Floridian, and so I was excited to see that they've got the notes feature installed there. Let's jump on over to talking about. Did you happen to watch any of the WWDC keynote or? Oh yeah. What are your thoughts on what you saw there?
For me, as someone who runs technology for for conferences, well, small-time conferences is not big stuff, but the idea it didn't come out of the keynote, but the thing that came out later was the fact that the Apple TV can now take peer-to-peer connections. From devices.
I didn't even hear. What is that?
Instead of, it's going to use a combination of peer-to-peer Wi-Fi and Bluetooth to allow you to do AirPlay mirroring and AirPlay streaming from a device, either a Mac or iOS, to the TV without having to be on the same wireless network.
Oh,
which to me, I can take my Apple TV and throw that over there and plug it into wherever I need to be, and I'm off to the races. I don't have to worry about carrying a little extra router. And it was neat because one of the rumors that people had come out with was that the new version of the Apple TV will have an Airport Express built in. I don't know if you saw that one, which I thought was ridiculous. But I think this is what they were hearing, is that what it really was is that you weren't going to need to have a separate router in order to connect to the Apple TV in order to be on the network. And
you're just I hook my Apple TV up to the projector or a large TV, and I get my iPad out and Wi-Fi I go directly, or Bluetooth I go
directly on it. It'll probably be the handshake will probably be Bluetooth, and then it'll transmit peer-to-peer through Wi-Fi. It'll be interesting to see what devices it's limited to, because from what I've read so far, it seems like you'll still be able to be on the internet with your device. So it's got to be creating a virtual device somehow to do that passing through. So I wonder if you're going to need a dual core, one of a 64-bit, not a dual core, but one of the 64-bit systems to really get the full power out of what they're doing, which is, Apple's typical operating system. Here's the new feature and it works with the newest stuff, which is, that's what they do, and it served them well for the last decade. So, but I think that's the biggest thing.
Well, here's where that's exciting for Church Tech folks, is I don't know if you've experienced this. I have. We have one Wi-Fi network in our church.
Mm-hmm.
When we first set it up, it was, me, and I had another guy who's a real, into tech, and so he started carrying an iPad, and then our church computer was on the wired network, wired into that
mm-hmm.
router. And so we basically had 3, maybe 4 if you count my phone, which, it wasn't getting used, but it was still connected. To now, we've got probably, in a church like ours, and I pastor a small church, we have fewer, on a really good Sunday, we'll have 110, 20.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But now we'll have 30 people, on a Bible app on their
phone,
and a few of them on a tablet. And so our, that's a tough time for us sometimes just to do our streaming to the network, whereas if we could put an Apple TV, connect that directly into the projector and mirror from the
and have it go direct.
That would be really awesome.
Oh, it would be great. I mean, I literally, when I'm presenting, I present from my iPad and control the presentation. I literally have a network, a wireless network in the sanctuary that's just called Worship No Internet, and it literally is just for my remote, because if I was going on the network where everybody else was, the packet collisions, I wasn't getting the response that I needed to be able to control the stuff. And so be able to go peer-to-peer, now I'm thinking I could get an Apple TV and plug this into the projector, and I could take this 100-foot VGA cable out and do all sorts of interesting things. So I'm very intrigued by that as far as for church tech. That should be good. So Antoine's coming.
Yeah, I saw that.
Okay, good. So I thought that was really cool. From a personal standpoint, I thought that and I'm forgetting the word, not contextual.
Continuity.
The continuity. Thank you. I knew it was a C word. The continuity is something that I've wanted forever. From any device that I've been using for such a long time. Back, I used to have my iPad set up connecting to my Linux laptop, and I'd use an app called SynCE to mirror the iPad on my KDE desktop. I mean, this is, I'm just dropping names now for geek cred, but the
go ahead, drop away.
But that was, I looked at it, I'm going, I want this. I want to be able to do this, and now here Apple's brought it into line to where these things are going to work together and figure out what context you're in and try to work that way. So I like that.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty cool. I like the idea of the continuity stuff. The thing that I'm concerned most about that is, what's the handshake going to look like? Are you going to have? I'm wondering if they're going to build NFC into this. I mean, what's it going to take? If, for example, they talked about automatic personal hotspot feature. How's that going to set up? How's it going to be automatic? In other words, is it going to be, they'll just sense the Bluetooth, or not Bluetooth? Well, maybe it will be Bluetooth. Will it sense that? You have to have Bluetooth turned on, which can drain your battery if you don't all the time, and it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. But I too am kind of excited about some of that stuff.
Yeah, if they can make it work, it'll be interesting. I don't think they're ever going to use NFC. Everybody keeps on doing that, and for whatever reason, they do not want it.
Did I say NFC? I think I meant, what's the thing? I'm losing the term.
The stuff they just created.
Yeah, was it
do the
iBeacon? I think is what.
iBeacons. Yes, I think iBeacon is what they're going to use.
But then
I'm really interested. I'm fascinated by iBeacon.
I'm sorry.
What's that? I'm fascinated by iBeacon. I think that's an interesting concept.
Yeah, that would be awesome. The problem is, my MacBook Pro, which I just bought this year, doesn't have anything about iBeacon installed, unless it's hidden and they just have to turn it on with a firmware update or something like that.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like Bluetooth was in the second generation Apple TV. Nobody knew it until they took the dang thing apart. So I think it's probably in there, and it's it's just part of the wireless standard. So it's flick a switch somewhere and see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm excited about that. What you were talking about, though, the iBeacon, what would that do for, churches? Imagine walking in to your church and you've got an iBeacon set up, and immediately your iPad shows up with the church bulletin and the announcement list and a link to the website and YouTube channel, or all of this stuff, and I don't. Can it open apps? Would it be able to open up like some app? Like our church has started using Life Church TV's Bible app interactivity stuff. Logos has something just like that. If you use Logos as the church presentation software, Proclaim, they've got something like that built into that. Would it automatically hook them up to that so they wouldn't have to do it, or offer to hook them up? That would be pretty cool.
Yeah, it really would be. Right now what I have is a QR code that's posted on the thing that if you scan it, it'll take you to an ebook version of the bulletin. But I would love for an alert.
Awesome.
I would love just an.
I've got little QR tags set up for me that I just tap it and it mutes my phone, so I don't get like that. So. Hey, there's Antoine, the great Antoine.
Hi, guys.
How you doing, brother?
Hi, Antoine.
Hey, Wes.
How you doing?
Long time.
It has been a long time. He's being ganged up on by 2 Philadelphians now.
Uh-oh.
Nice.
I better watch out.
Every Packers fan should fear that.
Go Eagles. So
Antoine Wright has just joined us. In case you don't know who Antoine Wright is, he's the good-looking one that just popped his head. And Antoine, give us just a little bit of brief bio intro for those who might be watching right now or who watch it later on.
Sure, no problem. My name is Antoine Wright. I am the founder and primary voice behind a crazy little web endeavor called Mobile Ministry Magazine. I am an even crazier person if you find me on a bicycle. I just finished my first 100K this weekend. And I like things that allow us to live. So if the technology gets in the way, I'm probably getting out of the technology.
All right, cool. Well, thank you. Well, what we're talking about is we did a little bit of news earlier, so if you've got something, we'll give you a chance to chime in on that in a bit. Right now, we're just talking a little bit of Apple news. Did you get to follow WWDC keynote from Apple last week?
Actually, I just watched the last of it this morning. Because it takes me a while to catch up with all the.
Right. Is there anything that stood out to you, maybe specifically as it relates to Church Tech News, or?
An Android.
Yeah, he's gone. There he is. No, back for a second.
They are saying we've been having bad solar flares, so apparently that's affecting Antoine. Hi, Antoine.
Hey.
Are you on your Nexus 7 that you're having so much trouble with?
No, I'm actually on my iPad mini.
Oh, okay.
So it might be the network. We have a thunderstorm happening literally in progress right now, so
okay.
I'm letting it do its thing. Gosh, what else? iOS 8 will be interesting. I'm interested to see what new products that Apple puts together that are iOS 8 native. It's one thing to have, let's say I have the Retina Mini with the A7 processor, so that it wasn't really built for iOS 6, and it was, iOS 7 was kind of like a warm up.
Yeah.
It was more or less built for iOS 8. So it'd be interesting to see, devices that have that latest 64-bit processor, that have the RAM, that have the screen capability, how iOS 8 really works on something it was designed for versus on something it was just adapted to. So that'll be interesting to see Apple pull off. I'm I could care less whether they do something wearable or not. I just think they're going to come out with a different type of nano. But that's just me. And then, you know, the change of programming languages will probably be a bigger shift than anything else.
It was neat to watch the Swift announcement, and if you noticed the developers in the first row, the one guy looked like he was like choking back tears of joy when they said you didn't have to declare your variable types, and the guy just like it was like Christmas came early. It was absolutely amazing. So I'm with you, Antoine. I think Swift is one of the sleepers from the consumer standpoint, but I think the developers are doing a jig right now.
All right, explain what that, for those who are not programmers, and you know, I'm not, but I kind of got what you were talking about there, but we might have some that aren't at all, you know, they're totally clueless about that kind of stuff. Explain what you just meant there by declare your variable. What is Swift and what's it doing there, Wes?
You want to take it, Antoine? You want me to? Because you're more of a programmer than I am.
I'm not a programmer. I keep telling recruiters that.
Okay, so right now the traditional language that you're writing for iOS, and it's called it's Objective-C, right? And when you are writing in Objective-C, you have to declare your variable. You have to say what your variable is going to be and what type it's going to be. So if it's going to be text, a variable is if you're let's scare everybody. It's like in algebra. X plus 2 equals 4. X is the variable, and so you have to figure out what X is going to be. So that's kind of what it is, and you have to declare what type it's going to be. So if it's a date, you can say if it's a date. If it's a text, you got to say if it's text. If it's going to be a number or a floating point number, which is a decimal, you have to declare it. And it's everybody's used to doing it. They've been doing it for years. But it takes lines of code in order to do that, and every line of code takes up memory, and it takes a little bit of a hit as the interpreter kind of reads the code and translates it into something the computer can actually use. And so what Swift does is it says, oh no, now it'll be able to figure out what your variable is just by the way that you use it. So when you use a variable, if it turns out that it's going to be a number, it's going to go, okay, this is a number variable, great. And it just figures that out automatically. And that's something that a lot of modern languages have done for years. And so the poor people who were writing Objective-C were kind of stuck back in the old ways of doing things. And this is going to save time for programming, and it should be a speed hit, because it's interpreting less, but somehow it works better. It's, you know, that's where you get to the mojo. But also, I think the playground and the fact that you can visualize when you're doing all your algorithms to determine how things are going to move and what they're going to do. Well, now you can, if you change something in the code, you can see mathematically how that's going to shift stuff over on the side, which is going to give people more visual feedback on how their program is going to be. So I'm a layperson, so I can't say more than that. But from the developers that I know, they're excited. No, they're cautious because this is a brand new thing, and they got to figure out what they're going to do with it. And even if it is worth the time learning the new language to come over here, but they're really excited about the possibilities and the fact that you can drop this Swift stuff directly into an Objective-C code, and it'll interpret fine and run. So you don't even have to rewrite your old stuff in order for it to
port
use
it out to other devices or things like that run that you can.
Yeah, and the real trick here is this is what Apple thinks is their biggest deal, because someone just did a zoom in on the icon for Swift files on the desktop. And that's where they've now moved the here's to the crazy one speech, which is to me, that's the Apple's looking at. This is where it really is going to hit the road. This is where developers are going to use all these cool tools that we just handed them. So I think that's really cool.
So a benefit to those of us who aren't coders, who aren't programmers, potentially could mean those who are would this mean that they would be able to make nice applications that they can see the end result as they're creating it, and therefore it means maybe a better looking application, or just faster coding of the application, so that from version 1 to version 2, it will, instead of being 2 years, it's 18 months or 1 year or something like that. Is that right?
I think at the beginning, speed of developments is the key, and that visual aspect is the second part of the key. And from there, I don't think we know where this is going to go. That's what's the exciting about it, is because now you have these people who are dreaming up possibilities, and the tie of speed and the ability to visualize what the code's going to do as you program it without needing to kind of do it in the back of your head, which that's what real people do. But this is for people who want the Swift playground. They got it. I think people are going to be able to do some incredible stuff. So I'm kind of intrigued just to see what happens.
Antoine? You with us, brother?
I put him to sleep.
Yeah, maybe that's it. We'll see if he can get back with us and go forward from there. I think the other thing, I've been using iOS 8 on my iPhone, and I've been using Yosemite on my MacBook Pro because I've got a developer account.
I'm very jealous.
Well, honestly, if you don't need to be. If you'd like to get in, I can get you in, because I don't know. They give you 90 devices, and I use 2.
I'm working on major projects right now, so I can't put it on a production machine. So I'm like, I want to so bad, but I can't do it right now. So,
but I'd say the thing, just for Apple fans, this is kind of inside baseball, but it's a lot less stable than it was this time around last year, which kind of has me a little nervous, because fewer apps or more apps are crashing on my iPhone than the first beta of iOS 7. You can't even use iMovie because it does not run on Yosemite right now. I don't have Final Cut, but I understand Final Cut suffers the same problem. Aperture works a little bit. It works fairly well. I'm a bit of a photographer. I love to take pictures, and so Aperture works okay, but there's some problems in Aperture. Pages has some problems, so I've gone all the way to Word now, and so I'm a little nervous about that. I still think they'll get it right, but I think there's going to be a lot more cycles, and so it may take a little longer this time around.
Well, and this is a public beta, so I think you're seeing earlier code than the developer preview release that you saw last year. I mean, that's the only thing that I can think of, because when was the last time Apple did a public beta?
Other than they did right before WWDC with Mavericks, they opened it up. But other than that, I'm a relatively new Apple user, and so I don't ever remember them doing.
Yeah, I don't remember a public beta like ever. I think they might have had some stuff for OS 10 when it first came out, Yeah. But I think you're seeing much earlier code than a developer preview, because this is. At least it's what I think, and it could be a later release. They might not be releasing this in September the way they have the last couple of years.
Yeah. Antoine, anything else? We're sort of going far out to left field here when it talks about Theotek, but
no, it's not. No, it's not far out at all. I mean, think about it. When for a vast majority of our churches who are the pastor or their closest assistant is their tech person, Apple is probably their next best friend after that. So the opportunities and issues of moving to new platforms or upgrading or sliding from one generation to another, those are just as relevant as we talked in a couple calls ago about Bible software licensing. I think they affect how we think about how they affect how we think about. Oh, yeah, that was good. You don't want to use them? Okay, toss them.
Well,
Sorry, cooking too.
go ahead, no problem.
I was inspecting some onions.
You should have let us see.
Yeah, you got some red onions that I was going to do with some tilapia. Yeah, so many things going on at this hour. You know, one of the things, and I was in a couple of beautifully philosophical, sociological conversations earlier today. One of the things that that kind of has popped up in a lot of my recent readings, I linked to it on Twitter last week on my blog on Friday. It was a slideshow, about 147 slides. The person asked, "What are we designing for? What are we using technology for?" And is it just to make something efficient? And if making things efficient, then why do we want to make it efficient? If we're getting more time back, why do we feel like we're losing time by reading more email or sitting on social media?
Mm-hmm.
I think these conversations that we have about updates and pain points and opportunities, those are good discussions to have, but they speak to kind of a more core issue that I think we all run into, especially when we talk to one another who are faith leaders, is how do we not get down the rabbit hole of diving so far into this technology that we lose what it means to live.
Mm-hmm.
We lose what it means to it's fun. It's absolutely fun to dribble on specs, and my screen is Retina and mine is just not there. It's fun to go back and forth on those things, but we do so, and we probably don't want to lose the focus of why are we using this to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
We use Mac because we believe that it's less administrative headache. Well, why do we want less administrative headache? Well, we want less administrative headache so that we can minister more. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
why do we want to minister more? Because people want to be ministered to, because we have a yearning to meet the calling in our lives. And so having these conversations, these pieces of conversations where we talk about opportunities, not just for developers, but for ourselves to use things better. If a public beta is not making our life easier, then we probably should walk away from it until it does make our lives easier, so that we're not really spinning our wheels doing the side of tech and ministry that we don't want to do, which is being an administrator. We want to be a creator. We want to make time for people to engage God. I don't know that we want to make time for ourselves to find out just how much more God knows about putting circuits together than we do.
Well, I think you're right about this stuff is all a tool. It's a means to an end. It is not the end itself. And as someone who loves technology, it often becomes an idol for me. And so I have to really resist the temptation to make the technology itself the end instead of the means to an end. And so, I own, just thinking about the area of Bible software, just recently I've been starting to think, I almost feel like I'm handcuffed by a plethora, because I've written for Christian Computing Magazine, and so, yes, I've invested a lot in 2 or 3, but I own 8 or 10, and that's just because, when the new one comes out for PC Study Bible, I say, can I review it? And they send it to me. And I've got all this stuff. I feel like, well, I've got it, so I ought to use it. And then I sit back and think, yeah, but it gets in the way if I don't remember how to do it on this. Like, I've got Accordance. That's a great piece of software, but because I don't use it day in and day out, I say, well, I need to pull that open so I can remember how to use it, so I can write an article about it sometime. And then I'm like, how do I use it? I forgot how to use it, even though I went to one of their classes and I've watched a bunch of their videos, but I don't use it day in and day out. I'm getting old, so I forget things. And so, and it's the same way whether it's a Bible software or a laptop or a piece of church presentation software or PowerPoint or whatever. But getting back to the WWDC, just to kind of put an exclamation point on it, as you were saying, Antoine, if a public beta doesn't serve your needs, stay away from it. I'll just tell you this: stay away from it for Wright.
This is not ready for prime time. I read people commenting going, this is crashy and it's terrible and it's not ready for a production machine. I'm going, if you put a public beta on a production machine, you're just plain doing it wrong. Like we've gotten spoiled. We're just used to these things just working. And
Well, Google, we're on Google's platform, and they're constantly in beta, and I think that's ruined us because we think, oh, well, Gmail's still in beta, which I don't think it is anymore.
Well, they lied, but that's okay. So it wasn't really beta. Come on.
Lie has led us to believe, oh, well, the iOS beta ought to be that good, because after all, they'd never release it to the public. But but they didn't release it to the public. You're the idiot who paid the $8 to. You
don't even need to do that for this one.
iOS. What's that?
You don't even need to do that for this one. This was to the first, was it like million or some, or 10,000? Some bizarre number.
Yeah. I don't think they've actually even opened that up yet. They've taken your name, but I don't think you can actually download it yet.
Gotcha.
The developers at this point, but.
Mm-hmm.
But okay, so then that almost boils into I hate to tangent tangent, but when we model, because we're ministers in the faith, ministers in tech, when we model our use of tech, are people seeing they're seeing what we do, they're seeing what we use,
mm-hmm.
but are they also seeing the decisions that we're going through when we say we're not using something? I'll use Facebook as a really good example.
Mm-hmm.
I do not have a Facebook account, and if folks say, why do you have a Facebook account? I say, well, because I like to read, and I tend to read the terms of service, and I still don't agree.
Mm-hmm.
And they go, well, what don't you agree with? I said, have you read the terms of service? And they go, well, isn't it the same as everything else? And I said, well, have you read the other terms of service? Because if we're supposed to be responsible.
You want Americans to read? So
Americans, Europeans, you name it. I get everybody.
Yeah, and I get pushback on that, Antoine, because one of the things I refuse to do, because I do have a Facebook account, is I will not use my kids' names on Facebook. My daughter is old enough to be on Facebook, and she's chosen not to be on it because we've explained to her how these things are used. And of course, I'm on it because half my congregation's on it. That's 2/3 of my pastoral visits every week.
Nice.
So I'll refer to my children as the boy and the girl, which I'm already giving away that I have 2 kids. But and I've gotten people like they'll instant message me going, private message me and going, well, why would you do that? That just seems so impersonal. I'm going, listen, Facebook basically makes money off of everything I put in here to sell me advertising and to use it and to sell everything they have about me. Look, I'm fine with that for me. I'm an adult. I can make that decision. And also, I'm just not that interesting, so it's fine. But my kids are minors, and I don't need to give them a window into my children's life.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need them to know when my kids were born. I don't need them to know how much they weighed when they were born or what their full name is or what their address is, and they don't need that. And so they're the boy and the girl. And most people are very they're very accommodating to that. They understand, but some people they didn't understand. They get it other ways. I'm like, that's fine. Look, it might be an illusion of freedom from the tyranny that is Facebook, but it's my illusion, and I'm going to hold on to it. And I've gotten some people to start to think, well, what exactly am I putting on here that's out for people to see and to use, and do I want this out here? And I'll tell you, when I have parents, when they have a child and they put height, weight, length, time of birth, where they were born, first, middle, last name on a Facebook post, I listen, I understand the joy of the instantaneous nature of getting this out to as many people as you want, but holy crow, like, you have any idea what avenue you just gave these people into the life of this human being that you just brought into the world, and people haven't paused to think about that at all. So
That's something that I think is. I actually. I'd like us to spend a lot more time on this because as we're talking about it, there's probably a lot of people out there that don't have a clue what they're giving away for free on Facebook. And I say this all the time, and I'm not the only one who says it, so it's not original to me. If a company is a publicly held company, you're not the customer, you're the product.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just put a note in our Evernote for next time that this probably ought to be like, top of the list, one of the things that we talk about, because Facebook potentially can be a good thing. I got a note on Facebook today from a church member who said her father had fallen, and asked, and this was in our private church group that we have set up, and I happened to be with our senior adult group. We went to the Billy Graham Library today in Charlotte, which, by the way,
and you didn't come by and say hi?
No, I didn't have time, brother, but we were there, and we were waiting to go in. Our time, we were there just a little bit early, and so I got that note, and I turned to the people on the church van and said, "Hey, Sherry's dad is hurt. We need to pray for." And one of my members said, "Well, let's pray right now." And so I said, "Well, you go ahead, let's pray." And so we got a chance. So there's that positive side of it, but then there's all this negative. So I'd like us to spend a little more time examining that in just a little bit. We're coming up now on about 50 minutes, which we try to keep this around an hour or so. So maybe here at the end, Antoine, you didn't have as much time up at the front. Is there anything that is jumping out at you that's happened over the last couple of weeks in church tech life that you want to share with us or talk about?
Give me 5 minutes.
Onions. There's onions.
Time to eat.
That's right. I'm answering text messages from my wife because she doesn't know where I am. I'm like, I'm just downstairs.
The biggest thing coming up right now. International Conference of Computing and Missions, ICCM USA, is next week, and World Evangelism Center or something of that sort in Missouri, right outside of St. Louis. That's going on next week. So pre-conference stuff starts on Sunday. Conference starts on Monday, goes until Friday. To those folks who have IT teams, it's not a slam, so no pastor that's listening, please take this as a slam. But the kind of ministry that your IT team needs is not the kind of ministry that they always get on Sundays or Wednesdays. They a lot of times need the kind of counseling, the kind of attention that really says, hey, we don't want you to come and serve, but we need you to actually come and get fed. And ICCM has really evolved into a retreat space for those who work ITIS in local and in mission settings. Last year, during the USA session, we actually had 2 counselors, male and female, that were available the whole time to talk private sessions with brothers and sisters and the couples that were there, so they could air out some things that they didn't feel that they could air out at their home churches or on the mission field. We had folks that voluntarily served, but made sure that they cycled out and got to do sessions themselves. So if you don't make it to the USA one, there was an Africa one that happened in April. There's a UK one, Europe one that happens in February. Australian one happens later this year. Those are worthwhile events for ITIS centered folks who could use to be poured back into. It's a time of enablement. It's a time of worship. It's a time of fellowship. I've learned about more board games during that time than I've ever learned in college. Crazy. So that's next week. Tommy Allen, who's a stats guru, mobile guru, text messaging dance guy, he was really gracious and presented virtually at the Mobile Ministry Conference last December, and he just made available
absolutely nothing.
Rubbed and presentable. Hey, he really gave a whole lot of numbers.
He made available what?
He made available that presentation that he did. Yeah, so
You
it's
didn't tell
really,
whether it was
really good information.
There was a
Sorry, I
lightning
know I
strike,
paused.
Antoine. We missed you.
No, it's all right. The he made available that presentation deck, which had a lot of really good numbers for those persons who are sending people to Africa, specifically West, Central, and South, who are sending folks to the Southeast of Asia, and those folks who are looking at South America as mission areas. How mobile is really upending practices that we kind of sort of thought were normal. So really, really good numbers, really, really good perspectives from somebody who gets his numbers right from the carriers themselves.
Cool.
That's awesome. Will you put the links to those, both of those, when we get this thing posted on Google Plus and also on YouTube? We'd love it if you go ahead and put those in the comments, so that if anybody's watching this and they want to find out more about both of those, if you can do that for us, that'd be awesome.
Will do, will do. I am being beckoned for dinner, so I better hurry up and close out.
Yeah.
Well, thanks. Appreciate you being here, Wes Allen.
Thank you very much for the invite, really.
Thank you much for coming and being a part of us tonight. We'll definitely have you come back sometime.
Thank you.
I want to share.
Good seeing you, Wes.
I want to share with those of you who, when you watch this, right now no one's watching live, but we usually get quite a few people who check it out afterwards. Next time we'll try to do this every 2 weeks, and so it'll be the 24th, if I'm looking at the date correctly, would be the next time. So we'll put that on our calendar so we don't miss it, and you put it on yours. 10 o'clock Eastern time, which makes it 9, 8, and 7 in the other time zones, or you have to do the math if you're around the world. I don't know. But next time, Dr. Joe Miller, he's a professor and a pastor and all-around good guy. He's going to be with us then as a special guest, and hopefully we'll get LaRosa Johnson back. That would be great. And if you guys ever think of any guests that you'd like us to invite to come along, we hope we'll be able to do that. Those of you who are watching, we hope that you've enjoyed this and it's been useful to you. And we'll put our information where you can find us online and other places afterwards. But we're going to sign off, and we appreciate you hanging out with us tonight.
Thank you.
Peace.